So, welcome back to the Drive to Succeed podcast. We have the one and only Dani Hakim on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting.
You're welcome. So, Danny, we've been in touch through LinkedIn, and right now, since majority of us are working at home, I'm really curious about the reason why you're here today is to enlighten us for those of us, for majority of us who are working at home, how to take care of our mental health. And you have an organization called Safe Space, which we're gonna dive in deep, later. But I'm really curious about what is your background, how do you get started, and who is Dani Hakim for our first time listeners?
Who am I? Yeah, that's a really big question to start this topic with. I have been in Dubai for 12 years. I'm originally from the UK. My background's marketing, so I've always worked in advertising agency, working kind of across all different industries, and that was pretty much straight out of university as well. And it's always been it was always my thing. Working in the agency side is great, but it also kind of comes with the sort of downside of it. It's quite hectic. You're always managing multiple clients. There's lots of things on the go, and I think after having my first child, I really struggled to perform at the sort of pace that I performed at previously. I was actually struggling with postnatal depression at the time as well. And I think, having a very high pressured job, being responsible for, a large proportion of the revenue, I suppose, in the agency, looking after all the healthcare clients, I really felt under a lot of strain from that role. So it was very much at that point where I started to really be curious about, my mental health and how that kind of fits together. And I suppose Dani Hakim changed at that point. And I even remember having conversations with my boss, and she was just like, you're not the person I employed, and I wasn't, I was now a mother. I was having probably 4 hours sleep at night, but still kind of the expectation to be performing at my usual standards. So I suffered a terrible burnout, and it was very much at that point where I was really looking at how we could be better for our mental health. So fast forward a couple of years, and I met up with my now co-founders. So Helen Hope, who's the original founder of Safe Space, put out a call on a Facebook group that we're all part of, and was, asking for people to come together to figure out this sort of mental health conundrum that we're sort of living within at the moment. And that was a year and a half ago. So time has flown. Time has flown.
Yes. So I know that. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and I really resonate. I mean, I'm not a parent yet, but I know that a woman life changes when they had a kid, so the priorities changed. So now you're more responsible with this life in front of you. So totally understand that. But I'm really curious about one thing about mental health, because mental health is a wide spectrum. So you focus, so you suffered mental health, your depression itself. You mentioned that in your bio somewhere, that you're a kid. I'm really curious. So mental health, in what terms? Is it mostly on corporates, and how do you find the symptoms when someone is suffering from mental health, especially in the workplace?
Yeah, so part of our bigger goal is to really demystify this topic of mental health. Like even within kind of people's assumptions, and even kind of what you're alluding to then, we all have mental health. It's no difficult. It's no different than physical health. We don't have a health that starts, at our shoulders, and this is one health and this is another health. We just have health. So I think there's, we're kind of saying that there's a huge misunderstanding when it comes to mental health, that people think that it is, I think they confuse it with mental illness. When you Google mental health, the images that come up are, people crying, it's dark, it's gloomy, so as a society, when we talk about mental health, people they automatically switch into that mode of this being a dark space, when mental health, like you did rightly say, is that it's a continuum, it's a spectrum. We can be, living in that sort of space in the middle where we're having okay days, good days, bad days. Something will happen, our wife will leave us, terrible day. Our sister will have a baby, fantastic day. So we're constantly shifting on this sort of spectrum of mental health. But there is a point on that process where our feeling depressed turns into suffering with depression, and they're two different things. We can be depressed, and we're not necessarily at a place where we can be diagnosed with depression. The two things aren't interchangeable. So when it gets to that point where we need to be looking and sort of spotting the signs for, within ourselves, when we need to be getting medical professional help, that is where we're at that point of diagnosis, and we need to be kind of speaking to our family medicine doctor. We need to be kind of looking at visiting one of the fantastic mental health clinics that are available here. But I think as a society, we put things under the carpet. We're very good at, ignoring these sort of signs and symptoms, and quite often, there'll be emotional symptoms, but there'll also be physical symptoms. And because we're living in such a fast-paced society, and we're constantly moving, constantly striving, we don't have time for these symptoms. So we're very good, and I was very good at just sweeping under the carpet. Forget about it, it'll be fine. But also on the flip side, very much, I think, and now obviously knowing a lot more about this, I always felt that, this is just me. This is I was made this way. This is how I'll always be. This is, this is part of me. I am, this is how I feel. And I think it was only through really getting curious about my own mental health that I really got a lot clearer that this is something that you can kind of work with wherever you are, whether you're just having bad days or this is something that is happening frequently, and it is in a place where you need to be kind of looking at getting professional support for this. So from our perspective, we work both in the community and we work with corporates. And it's wherever we're working, it's about getting people to be curious. It's about getting people to prioritize. It's about generating awareness. It's about having conversations like you and I are right now that are transparent but informative. Getting people to really switch on to this conversation and give it the sort of time it needs. But we're not the mental health professionals, but we partner with mental health professionals in order to make our spaces safe. So we have a network of professionals that range in all shapes and sizes, from psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, therapists, coaches, and even well-being professionals, in order for us to kind of come together, create content, create experiences, workshops, in order to kind of facilitate this process.
Understood. So now that I understand it, so safe space is like creating a safe environment where you can facilitate these types of conversations so people can be aware. Because I know sometimes when depression, even in the workplace, people wouldn't admit it. Like, there's I cannot use the word, there's a shitstorm happening in their home, and then they bring it back to office. And, when they come to the office, they pretend that, there's nothing really happening. But then when a friction comes in with their boss, then it all just explodes. And, it's mismanagement. But I'm really curious. So you mentioned you partner up with a lot of coaches, mental health, or maybe psychologists. So this is a community event, and you also have a consultancy for corporates, or how does it work?
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. So we got together, and like I said, from the year and a half ago when Helen put out that first post, first and foremost to support the community. So we're living in, a city that potentially is quite can be quite hard for some people to live in. It's the biggest, the bestest, the brightest, the boldest, the fastest, the tallest, the strongest, you know, and there's lots of commuting that happens, there's stress and pressures and long work hours and all these kind of things that are happening, and it happens in every city. It's just this one's more glamorous than others. You know, so from a community perspective as well, accessibility. So accessibility is a really big thing for us. And I think when you think of how accessible mental health support is here in this region, we're very much at the beginning of that journey. So from a cost perspective, for example, mental health isn't always covered on your insurance. So, sorry, mental health support isn't always covered on your insurance. Yeah. So if you have a flu, for example, your doctor's appointment will be covered by your mandatory insurance, but not necessarily if you are suffering with depression, which is something that we're trying to kind of improve also. If we think about accessibility from an information perspective, you know, there isn't very much that exists on the topic of mental health, even in the Arabic language. You know, it's stigmatized around the world in every language, but what we want to do is for people that are, like I said, have that curiosity or have that want to find information, we want to make it easy for them to start. So in the community, we have pre these times, we had a weekly meetup where, you know, and people assume that we have our own space, but actually what's important for us, not only from a sustainability perspective, but is we're using spaces that already exist. So, for example, we meet in the gorgeous Tanya's Tea House every Wednesday. We have a mental health professional that comes in. We take a topic. It could be relationships. It could be even nutrition. It could be the positive side of negative emotions. And we host sessions for people to come, listen, you know, again, generating that awareness, stimulating that inspiration, and giving people, you know, guidance and some homework, you know, most of the time, where they can kind of go away and be like, right, I've heard this, I want to know more about that, and point them kind of in the right direction.
And this event, is it more like membership, or is it like open to public? And
it's open to anybody. Anybody can come and join us. It's a little bit different now. Obviously, everything's online, and I suppose post when we kind of resume normality, that we will actually have now both areas covered. We've got our online safe space, and we've got our physical safe spaces, and it's just about signing up. So, like we use Eventbrite. People kind of save their space, so there's like not a ticket that you need to pay for. It's all free of charge. But it just allows us to control the numbers, because it's heavily oversubscribed every single week. You know, we want to make sure that people can, you know, have some commitment to themselves to be there. So that's why we ask them to book a ticket.
Yes, and I'm really curious about you. You suffer depression. Can you walk us through a little bit about your, you know, maybe your childhood? Have you always been attracted to mental health? You know, what made the transition from marketing? You already said that in a nutshell, but you know, you mentioned that you always suffered from depression, and self-care is always important. So can you just walk us through around that as well, and you know, what made you attract to this kind of topics?
Yeah, so I don't think I've always suffered with depression. I think you know, you come into this world as an open book. So I struggled with chronic pain. So I had an injury in my back when I was, you know, mid-teenage years, and that's a really important, crucial time in your life where you're figuring out who you are. And you know, I'd never really had to struggle with anything before that. I had a great childhood. I was very intelligent, I was very popular, you know, everything. I ticked pretty much every box, but this pain really threw me. You know, it completely, I lost my identity to it. You know, I didn't know how to deal with it. I probably wasn't a very resilient person prior to this, because I hadn't been through struggles. You know, they'd been handed to me on a plate. So when I then sort of had been living this, when I moved away from home to university, that's when the cracks really started to appear, because, you know, I didn't have my sort of immediate family, like my friends were my family at university, but it's something that I dealt with. Back pain was a weird one, because and I used to go through this thing about, I wanted I wanted people to know that I was in pain. I wanted a scar. I wanted like something that people could know, because you don't know, it's such a strange one. I had a really sort of difficult time sort of to conveying people that, can you slow down? I can't catch up. And my flatmates at
Yeah.
university had to put my socks on in the morning because I couldn't reach. So
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
big thing to be going through as a kind of teenager, I suppose. And that's when I was first diagnosed with depression. And at the time, kind of looking back, I think it was easy for the diagnosis to happen, made sense, but it was also quite easy for me to be put on this medication, but I wasn't really given also the support from a
Mm.
therapy perspective. That wasn't an option. And again, I don't know if I would have taken it at the time. I was 18 years old. I was living my life,
Yeah.
so I was still kind of doing the things. I was still partying. I was still kind of doing all this, but at the same time, there was still a piece of me that was just sad, really sad. Really, why me? Why is this happening to me? What have I done wrong to deserve this? Very much feeling victimized through the pain. So it took a long time. It's taken. When I look back, I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for my back pain. I'm really grateful that I kind of suffered with those depressions. Like I part of a population of people that have felt the extremities of all emotions that are
Yeah.
to be felt, and that's kind of empathy now that I have for that situation, that kind of sadness, that depression, that pain. I wouldn't have had that before. So I've learned very much over time to really take what I've been through and
Mhm.
look at how I can kind of make this into a productive situation. And obviously helping other people is
Yeah.
something that I'm wired to do personally, and it makes sense kind of the two go together. So I've always been an anxious person as well, I suppose. That's probably more of a personality thing. I'm all
Yeah.
go go go. I'm a bit of an all or nothing kind of guy.
Yeah.
So the combination of the sort of two and situations, it was probably always destined to pan out that way. But I've really been fortunate enough to have also a very proactive mindset where I've always wanted to understand this. I'm a really nosy person. I always want to know why. I was that
Mhm.
kid that's like, why, mum, why? But why? And this is what I've always been kind of, why is this happening? What can I do better about it? What can I do for
Understand.
myself, and kind of understanding it.
So,
So
you go into the journey where you seek for answers, you probably seek out for mentors as well. I'm really curious because you mentioned that in Safe Space you have three founders. I think is Helen a coach by nature, or I mean the profession?
no, so we all have marketing backgrounds, a little bit different. So Helen's background is fashion and retail, sports and wellness. Leanne and I
Yeah.
used to work together in the same agency. Her specialty is more in sort of branding, the CSR space, and I'm kind of more health and wellness, or healthcare as the industry.
So you were always attracted to the health and wellness
Well,
topic.
yes and no. I think there was a time, so in my career, looking after healthcare, so hospitals, big pharma, telemedicine, clinics, medical charities. I remember when the healthcare client, the first healthcare client came into the agency, and I was just the slowest person in the room to hide under the desk. I really did not want to work in healthcare. It's so boring and regulated, and this wasn't me. I wanted to work on the airlines. I wanted to work on the automotive accounts.
Yeah.
But no, I got stuck with the healthcare account because I had capacity at that time, and there was a little bit of a resistance, but it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. It was the industry again that I was supposed to work on. And yes, it's boring, and yes, it is regulated, but what I've tried to do throughout is to put the human back into it, and help healthcare
Mm,
organizations understand that we're not just patients, and doctors aren't just doctors on a pedestal. We're all getting a very sort of human approach to that. So I think I've been working now in healthcare for about 7 years maybe.
mhm. Mhm.
And that again has been a really good foundation, you know, working with hospitals and doctors and clinics and understanding the process and working with, you know, government entities and the health authorities has really helped me to understand, you know, the lay of the land and how it works and where the gaps are, I suppose, as well.
Yeah.
And Safe Space is very much built to fill those gaps. So from a healthcare perspective, there's, like I said, on that continuum of mental health, clinics and hospitals and doctors are very much post-diagnosis. We're looking at
Mhm.
everything, you know,
Pre.
pre-diagnosis. So we're looking at prevention.
Understood.
We're looking at those kind of community initiatives that are supporting supporting people where they're up to now. And we actually offer an opportunity for the clinics to plug into the community. You know, so
Mm.
in our
It's like
network
a
of
sponsorship
professionals,
or
you know, it makes sense for them to kind of support us, and we support them because we want to demystify therapy as well. You know, there's a real stigma around going to
yes.
therapy and getting that help, which, you
Mhm.
know, we wouldn't have that same approach if we were going to go and get our ingrowing toenail fixed, you know. But when it comes to our mental health, we're a lot more reluctant. So we're here to kind of help support the clinics and around this topic and
Yes.
provide a more supportive journey for people to plug into the clinics and also for the clinics to kind of get involved with the community stuff as well.
Understood. So in your experience, so safe space has been running for a year and a half now. What are the common symptoms of people who suffer from, burnt out or even slight depression in the workplace? And because I think you offer also consulting for corporates. Is that it?
Yeah, so we with the corporates we do we offer at the moment we're offering a set structured 6 week program that's all delivered online. Um,
Mhm.
for us and one of our initial sessions, so we do an assessment which helps the organization, even from a corporate culture perspective, understand where
Mhm.
they're at and how supportive they are for their employees. And then we put
Mhm.
together a program, but the first session that we always do is called Mental Health Unfiltered. And what that allows us to do is to really sort of put the basics in place. So we do
Mhm.
talk about spotting the signs,
Yes.
but we talk about it with a psychologist. So we have
I,
the clinical psychologist that's on the call, and we talk about what some of those things look like. So, you know, sometimes we are guilty of using Dr. Google to like diagnose these things for us. But I think the overall premise is, you know, giving ourselves that little window, which may be just a minute, just to check in with ourselves, you know,
mm,
and how we're feeling. Mental health is it's has lots of sort of nuances. There's lots of, you know, it's very complicated, and that's why the sort of medical professionals train for so many years to really understand it. So I think at a basic level, we do help people to kind of check in with themselves using a kind of a score. So where would you kind of score yourself today? Are you struggling? Do you feel that you're in crisis mode? Or are you, you know, are you okay? Are you
mhm.
great? Are you, you know, thriving? Are you excelling? And I suppose then looking at, is this something that's happening to you just today, or have
Mhm.
you been in crisis mode for a week, two
Oh, long
weeks,
time.
a
Yes.
month, a year, or your life? And this is where we can kind of talk about, you know, and help people understand that this is something that they
Mhm.
probably need to go and see
And then
a
this
professional.
unfiltered moment, is it like one to one or is it like one to many? Because I know it can be some privacy issues, and especially when you're working with corporate, it's a big team.
Yeah.
So of course, what you're gonna be sharing, you don't want your manager to be hearing all that. I mean, or even eavesdropping on the topic.
Yeah. Well, we kind of disagree a little bit, to be honest. And I suppose this is going to change over time. But right now, we're working predominantly with forward thinking companies who are already aware that supporting their employees with their mental health is good for business. We want to make it great
Mhm.
for business, you know, and I think there
Mhm.
has been, especially in a business environment, this secrecy, you know, don't tell HR. You know,
Yes.
you wouldn't go to an interview, say, hi, my name's Dani and I suffer with depression. You know, there's,
Yes.
again, the stigma that's around, you know, mental health and mental illness, has meant
Uh-huh.
that we've kept this information very, very guarded. But there's so much strength in vulnerability. And
Mm.
I think as we're at the very beginning of a journey with mental health,
Yes,
and
yes.
I sort of make the analogy around the physical health. So when I worked in agency, and one of my first briefs that I got from the pharma company I was working on was a breast cancer drug. And we couldn't even say breast cancer, and the campaign was in Arabic as well, and there was no word for it. It was a disaster. Not only did we have one hand tied behind our back, or our eyes closed, it was how were we going to make anything out of this? And now you jump forward 5-6 years later, and people are getting screened in Costa Coffee, at Breast
Mm.
Cancer Awareness Month. So in that 6-year period, we've gone from a space where, it's almost like the Voldemort of medical, like don't mention cancer, and there's, it's the curse, versus now where we're a lot more at
Oh,
ease
yeah,
with the
yeah,
topic, and actually talking about it saves lives. We're on that journey with mental health right now. So we
mm,
are at a place where it is, heavily stigmatized. And I don't even like to talk about the stigma because it doesn't need any more stigma, to be honest. I'm kind of done with that topic. But it's, we do need to be mindful that people aren't fully aware or educated around the topic. So
yeah,
it is confusing. And if you've got somebody that's in a HR role that's pretty old school about this, and they're sort of seeing mental illness as a weakness, they're seeing people that struggle with their mental health as being somebody that's going to be toxic in the work environment, that's very close-minded. We need to get new HR rather than new employees. It's about, every individual is unique and wonderful, and we have something different to bring. It's about working with those strengths and weaknesses in a sort of team environment to make sure that it's there. But if you don't have that psychological safety in a team or in a work work environment, if you don't have that trust between the employees and the HR, what else is going to come out? It isn't just going to be a mental health issue. There's going to be
yes,
lots of toxicity that comes up, within the team. So we're not. Our sessions, especially in the corporate, they're informative. They're more delivered like a workshop. It's not like a group therapy session. So we're not all kind of getting around and handing the tissues out and crying it
yeah,
out. But we are an open book. So we do encourage people to ask questions about things that they might have queries about. We are always available after the session should there be anything that's come up that might trigger somebody that they sometimes it can bring up emotions or past trauma, and we want to
mhm,
make sure that we're there for them, and subsequently working with the corporate team, HR, the management, in order to have the right things in place, like we talked about insurance. Not always the insurance is there, but we have, we have telehealth partners that we work with that provide online therapy, talk therapy, text therapy, in order to make sure that these employees have the right support that they need. And
mhm,
yeah, we're figuring it out. We're putting things in place that haven't necessarily been there before. It's a bit of a new territory, but we
yeah,
have to start. We should have started a long time ago, but we're kind of
yeah,
we're doing what we can.
yeah. It's really interesting to to start something that is not really out of your. I mean, you can say out of your field of expertise and bring people. Because the way I see it is that you are a safe space. This is your client's community, and this is the experts, and you bring it all together to make this one amazing community where people would want to grow together, maybe unchain old habits or old beliefs. And so now that you answered this, I'm just really curious, what are the current challenges that you're facing right now, or every corporates, especially now that we are, social distancing, how does safe space come into this, place of social distancing and,
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love this term social distancing. Like, how mind bending. They need to put one term that makes it feel even worse than it feels already. Like, I'm not a fan, of the term social
yeah,
distancing. We're physically distant, but I think trying to keep teams as emotionally connected as possible right now is, it's only going to help companies survive at this time, and more than survive. We have, I think we're all on this sort of like fight or flight zone, but we need to be using this time to thrive where we're at right now. So from a corporate perspective, there are a whole new set of challenges. Working from home, again, there's like trust issues, people actually working, there's communication issues, technology issues. There's a lot of things that we're fighting against. So really from a corporate recommendation perspective, it's transparency, it's kindness, it's empathy, it's listening to your employees. I think we can kind of say, like, we do it in day-to-day life, like, how are you doing? How are you doing, Daniel? How are you doing? Great. We don't necessarily even want to hear the answer. We're too busy. We're already out the door. But really taking that time to check in with our employees. And I was speaking to someone about this yesterday, and it happens a lot. People check in. That's great. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Great. Oh, family are well. Nice. Brilliant. Oh, can you do this thing for me? So there's something then that's it almost like null and voids that curiosity about how they're doing, because you've just asked them to do something for you. So checking in with your team members, checking in with family and friends, and just genuinely taking that minute out of your day just to see how they are, just have that 5-minute conversation with them. And same in the community as in corporates. I think that's really important, and that's where that sort of social distancing has sort of made it a bit trickier. So for us, it's about keeping teams, keeping their spirits up, keeping them feeling supported, even though they're at a distance. So as well as the sort of corporate program where we're delivering the workshops to, large groups of people on Zoom, we're also working behind the scenes with the management teams to kind of come up with ideas on how to stimulate that support, how to kind of promote that kind of. Yeah, exactly. And we're blessed that we're working with some really fantastic clients at the moment. So it's easy for us. Because they were doing a lot of this stuff before. It's just about now how we kind of just hold their hand. And I think sometimes just knowing someone that is there to support you, it's enough, and I think organizations that are getting Safe Space on board, it's like 25% of the battle already done. You can see as an employee, if my MD is willing to sort of invest a bit of our time, effort, and a little bit of budget in working with a company like Safe Space, then this is a good place to work. And that's the kind of message really. For us, it would be a difficult use of my time to be going out convincing people that this is the right thing to do. I've only got a limited amount of hours in my day, and I want to be using that to be working with people that kind of already get it, I suppose. And it's here, it's available, it's accessible, and we want to make sure that as many people have access to it as possible.
I think looking at in retrospect, it's actually a brilliant business model. I mean, nobody wants to admit that they have like a big hole or even a small hole that can turn into a disaster, like mental health, and providing this safe space where a CEO or an MD can, freely talk about vulnerabilities, what is happening to the company, and really encouraging people to talk about, how can they be great together, what are the types of solutions that can, we provide. Because I think you're right, it's actually a little bit of mental health and company culture, because it provides that openness and facilitates that conversation. Now I'm really curious about, since you provide this with companies, where do you go to if you wanted to have this kind of conversations?
But where do I go to personally, or where do?
Yes. Where do you go to personally?
So
Who do you go to? Do you have mentors? Do you have inspirations, or
Yeah, very much. I've got a whole list, and even I've got coaches for my coaches. I just try and fill any moment of, I don't have very many windows where I can just sit, but I learn. I'm reading books, I'm listening to podcasts, and I'm constantly trying to, puts the right information in, the right context, the right theories around this topic. And I've been kind of doing this for years, I suppose, on this specific topic. But
Do
I
you have
work
that
with
one
the
person that you go to?
say again, sorry.
I'm sorry, do you have that one person that you go to, like when I'm, feeling, like this, or something?
Yeah, well, I used to, but I haven't had that regularity in place this year. It's something that I did every single week for about 4 years, and I worked with a coach who's based in the UK. We've always had a virtual relationship, and I suppose at this moment I've done a lot of self work. I've done a lot of personal growth. Like I said, I do a lot of extracurricular learning. Actually doing safe space is therapy in itself. I have the ultimate pleasure of hosting all these sessions for corporates, hosting all these sessions in the community. So I get a little top up every single week. I'm the best customer. I'm there at every session.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly getting this information. I think part of my therapy and part of my healing also is helping other people. So I get a fix from that too. That's my medication.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've worked really hard. I've worked really hard over the past 4 years to kind of be at that place where it's not a necessity for me right now to have a sort of weekly therapy, but I have like coaches that I work with. So I'm a qualified health coach myself, but I work alongside kind of another health coach because health is wealth, right? It's all we've
Yes,
got at the
yes.
end of the day, and that's something that is a real priority for me. So I make sure that includes, it kind of links in with mental health, even though it's more like nutrition and movement based. It
Yes,
impacts my
yes.
mental health.
Yeah, exactly.
But the number one thing for me is sleep, and
That's
it's free, and it's accessible, and most of us have a bed. We all
yeah.
have pajamas,
We hope. Also, I mean, yeah, majority.
those that do. And it really, when I have a bad night's sleep, it throws me. And I've got a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old, and my 4-year-old hates sleeping. He
Yeah.
doesn't like to rest. He is the first one up every morning. He will open the curtains. He sleeps in my bed on my head most nights. Like he's a wonderful disaster. So sometimes I don't get the best sleep that I can, but when I don't, it really affects me. So I do everything possible on the days that I'm productive, when I'm not trying to work too much, going to bed early, having a good bedtime routine, good sleep hygiene, making sure that I'm,
Yeah.
have the right darkness. I listen to kind of hippie music when I go to sleep. I have
Yeah.
essential oils burning in my bedroom. The planets aligned, and then I can get the good night's sleep. So that's my Dani one top tip of the day:
Yes.
sleep.
I totally agree. I mean, for me as well, one of the number one thing that is important is sleep. I mean, because most people don't know this, but they actually have a sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone like you work in the health space, you probably already know that I need a machine for my airways to breathe. So actually, for I think for the past 3.5 years that me and my wife got married, my wife can be a living testament that if I don't have the right amount of sleep, then it's gonna be terrible. So I totally agree with you on that. Just before my last and final question, where can people find you? Where can people find more about your work, and how can they get more about information about Safe Space?
Yeah, for sure. So we're on pretty much every social channel. We are Safe Space DXB, all one word: Instagram, Facebook, um, LinkedIn. We have got a website, safespacedxb.com.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we are also available hello at safespacedxb.com. So
Yes.
you can get in touch.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. So my last and final question would be, because I always ask this: if everything is stripped away from you right now, let's say 10 years from now, where safe space become this global movement or global community, because I assume this, and I mean you're not just looking to make it here in the UAE, but as well globally, especially now that we have technology. If everything is stripped away from you, the safe space, your businesses, or even your books that you might publish in the future, what would be your main drive to succeed?
It's helping people. Like I just can't. I can't not do it. You know, I even had an argument with my husband at the weekend for helping someone. You know, I am. It's something that fills me with joy. I just can't rest if I know that somebody else is struggling, even when it's to my own detriment, which, you know, sometimes you kind of give too much.
Yeah,
Not having good boundaries and saying no is
yeah,
something that I struggle with. So, whatever I'm doing, as long as I'm using my skills to help people, nothing else matters.
perfect. So I think you're, I don't know if you know this term, every one of us has our own love language. So I believe your love language is an act of service. So the more you serve people, the more you feel love and feel validated and,
That sounds just like me.
absolutely. So I think that's it for today. Thank you so much, Danny, for your time. And we're gonna put in the links on, the show notes and everywhere we post this in social media. So I think that's it. So thank you so much for your time.
Brilliant. Thank you. Have a great day.